Welcome to the Awesome Black Dad Show, where our goal is to give life to stories of fathers in a way that empowers and encourages dads to become a better version of themselves. This episode kicks off our first theme month, and this month we're all about finances. As fathers and men, we're always told a man should provide and protect. The problem is that there's very rarely much dialogue after that cliche. The goal this month is simple: encourage fathers to not just have conversations about money, but to be more deliberate in their pursuit of becoming better at personal finance, and also take advantage of some tips, tools, methods, and opportunities offered during these episodes. Today we talk to Talaat McNeely, one half of the powerful money couple behind the brand His and Her Money. Talaat and his wife Ty invite couples into their personal lives with the hope that their own personal journey will help other couples learn and grow when it comes to all things money. America's #1 money couple has been featured on Black Enterprise, Fox News, USA Today, Essence, Entrepreneur Magazine, just to name a few. Talaat is a U.S. Army veteran turned special education teacher. He is passionate about his faith, his family, and facing challenges head on. His understanding of money and money management started out slow, which led him to face a consumer debt of around $30,000. However, with the ongoing support of his wife Ty, the family conquered the mountain of debt and learned many valuable lessons along the way. Talaat has a master's degree in education leadership and a bachelor's of science in business administration. We will get into how Talaat overcame his struggles and how he's helping others like him become the best version of themselves. I introduce to you Talaat McNeely. Welcome to the Awesome Black Dad Show. In doing my research about you, man, it seems like you wear a ton of hats. I can't even begin to count. Right?
Me either. I lost count a long time ago.
Right, and I recently watched a video of you and your wife talking about how many accounts you had, and it was like 13, and that just like blew my mind. And so you can probably multiply that by 2 in terms of the number of hats you wear. So what I'd like to do is, instead of getting into all the hats that you wear, I think I would really like to get to the essence of who you are. So who is Talaat McNeely?
I think that, it's an evolving definition. I'm always reflecting on who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing in this world. But I think as it stands today, I am a person that elevates others to see the potential in them that they don't see. And that leads me to, the various hats that I wear. My wife and I are co-founders of His and Her Money, where we elevate people's financial literacy, help them see some areas that they need to improve on with their finances, because we haven't been taught anything about money in school. Most of us weren't taught anything by our parents, and we just kind of get out here and figure it out. And most of us never figured out. So we like to kind of shorten the learning curve, and we provide resources and products and educational tools to help you understand your money a little bit better. We're also associate pastors at our church, All Nations Worship Assembly in Chicago. I am in at the education field, administrator, been doing that for a decade, former Army soldier for 12 years. I mean, it goes on.
Keep on coming. Most guys got a closet for their shoes. I'm sure you got one for your hats, man.
I know, right? But I love it. I love it all. You know what I mean? Because it allows me to touch people in a different way in each arena. And so I'm happy to be used by God at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I can definitely dig that. So, the core of what you and your wife do is around personal finance, right? And as you said, to piggyback off of that, first of all, we're not taught that stuff in school. And then second, culturally, there's a big imbalance in terms of just having conversations around personal finance. So growing up, did you grow up with both your mom and your dad in the household?
Yes.
Okay.
It wasn't my biological dad, but yes, I absolutely had. I was raised by who I refer to as my father. He raised me from the age of 5 on. And so who I am is a direct result of him and his imprint on my life. Mm-hmm. So yes, I was raised predominantly in a 2-income home.
Okay. And have you ever met your father or your biological?
Let me say no. I don't remember that. What I'm told is the last time we were in the same space, I was 3.
Okay. Understood. So looking back, what would you say would be the biggest financial lesson you got from your mom, your dad, or both growing up?
To be honest, they were they were very smart with the money that they made. There was never a 6-figure year or a 6-figure job or anything like that. But they maximized their resources. I'm able to see that now in my 30s. I wasn't necessarily able to see that as a teenager or even in my 20s,
Or early
because
30s for me.
yeah, when
Yeah.
I was, take it back to high school, when my friends were coming to school with the new Jordans
Mm,
on, I was coming with the Pro Wings. You know what I mean? Like,
mm,
for
yeah.
those of you who aren't from where I'm from, the Pro Wing is the Payless version of the Jordans, and so that's what I went to school with, and I never got anything name brand. And so when I left home, I joined the military at 17 years old. I made it my mission to buy only things that had name brands
Mm,
and only the types of shoes that everybody else was wearing. And I ended up in a bunch of debt. So I didn't heed to what I saw. I tried to do the exact opposite because I thought what they were doing wasn't it. It wasn't the thing to do. And it actually was. They both retired debt free. Their home was paid for. And, they ended up in a good place because of the decisions that they made. So I was able to realize that as I got older. But, I went out and I made a bunch of money mistakes anyway when I first got started.
oh, okay. So yeah, so do you recall any point in time of having a conversation with your mom or dad
For
about what?
sure.
Yeah. What's
Well,
the most memorable? Yeah.
first of all, the essence of work and money comes from work. Money doesn't come from handouts. If you want some money, then you need to figure out a way to earn some money. So whether that's cleaning the cars, whether that's I had chores that I had to do because my last name was McNeely that I
Right.
wasn't gonna get paid for. But then there were some things that I could do around the home to earn some money. And then, I started working early, 13 years old. I was able to work on a golf course, legally, as a caddy. And so, for one of the first things they had me do was open up a savings account and told me that you don't spend every last dollar that you make. You get to spend some, but you got to put some in church. You got to put some in the savings account. And, just early lessons about that. I had a bank account at 13 years old.
Right.
And they taught me that I had to give, save, and spend at an early age. And so, although I did some things wrong, I still had some core values that they instilled in me. Things like having a good, solid work ethic. If you want something, you go earn it, and don't spend up every last dollar that you make.
Right. So it's kind of that old adage about raise up a child in the way it should go, and that they'll never part from it. Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
forgive me, I'm probably messing that whole that whole
No, you're
scripture
good.
up.
You're good. You're good. And I think that probably what the disconnect that I did have was that was probably the extent of it. Like, my parents are from a generation where you don't, and not just on the money tip, but there's not a lot of communication of quote unquote adult topics from parent to child. A child is supposed to stay in a child's place.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a lot of, talking about budgeting, talking about income, talking about expenses. It was just like, can I have this? No. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like an end of discussion.
Yeah.
And so, I had to really learn. I didn't know nothing about bills. I didn't have no bills. I didn't know anything about how to invest, or I didn't know anything about debt. I didn't know anything about credit cards. No discussions like that. Just real basic, rudimentary.
Right.
Give, spend, and save.
So when you talk about that disconnect, the question I was going to ask is because it seems like we all have these growing pains, right? We go no matter the principles that we kind of are that we're taught kind of growing up. There's this gap when we get to an age where we feel like we're an adult and we go out and do what it is we want to do. What do you think? Is there any way to kind of shorten that gap? Because I have young kids, right? And we'll get into it a little bit, bit later, but shorten that gap in terms of really, really instilling in them so they don't have to make some of the same mistakes that we make, whether we go from, and they'll probably make bigger mistakes. Like my kids don't wear pro wings. They won't have to wear pro wings like we
Right.
did growing up.
Right.
They're in a different situation, but there's
Yeah.
still room for mistakes there. So what can we do, or what do you think that disconnect is for that?
I think probably the biggest is we're not teaching the why behind a lot of these things. A lot of times from a dynamic of parent to child. We're just telling them the what. You know what I mean? Like, you
Okay.
can't do this or you can do that. And if you don't give a child or an adult a reason as to why, it's no reason for it to stick. It feels more of you're talking at me instead of to me. It's like a top-down approach. And so what you need to do, or what we need to do as fathers, is to give our kids principles and give them a reason why these principles are important. We need to give them the understanding of, even using our own life stories. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not a thing. And my wife and I deal with this when we're talking to people. They feel like I don't have it all figured out. So how the heck am I going to tell my kids
Yeah.
about money? Because I'm coming to you all because I need some help figuring it out. Well, good. Take them on the journey with you.
Right.
Talk about how you feel now that you got all these 6 figures worth of student loans that's
Ugh.
up against it. Talk about how it feels. Talk about things that maybe you would have done differently and why. You know what I mean? Because it's causing this to be delayed. I'm working a job, then I have to work overtime to make sure you have what you need, and I can keep up the student loan. Like, don't hide the story.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because there's lessons at the mountaintops and at the valleys that your kids can glean from, because they're paying attention regardless. And if you
All the
don't
time.
say something, they're going to assign their own conclusions, like I did. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, I saw my parents using coupons, and I saw my mom at the grocery store with a calculator, calculating everything up before we went to the checkout to make sure she didn't get duped, right?
Right.
But I didn't know necessarily why. As her child, that was just the norm, and so I just went along with it because that's my mom, that's what she does. They say I can't have this or I can't have that. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know why, and so therefore I have to come up with my own conclusion, and my conclusion was, oh, they're just cheap.
Yeah, or any
And
other thing
so,
in between, because I
right.
find myself having that problem today because my boys are they're 6 and the youngest will be 4 in January, and they're at that stage where they're extremely curious about any and everything that they hear, see, especially the things that they hear and see mom and dad do. And
Yeah.
so after a long day's work, it is very easy for us to come in and be like, we want you to do a particular thing, and they ask why, and we're like, because we said so. Right? And
Yeah.
that then has this impact, this long-lasting impact, because they're going to get it from somewhere, and you would
Oh, they're
more.
gonna get it from everywhere
Yeah.
else if we don't say anything. The music is gonna speak to them. The TV is gonna speak to them. Social media is gonna speak to them,
Right.
and they're going to look at those things. They're gonna read those captions. They're gonna read those posts. They're gonna look at those videos. They're gonna look at those images and say, "Man, they balling. That's what I want."
Yeah.
My dad, man, he over here, I can't even, he getting me the Air Force Ones, but I ain't never had no J's.
Right.
Like, I don't want that. I want to be like them. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I'm gonna figure out what they're doing, or I'm going to try to emulate them at my level, because nobody's telling me anything else. The voices that I see on TV and on my phone are speaking louder than the voices in my home.
Man, no truer words have been spoken. So just writing these notes down, because these are things that I need to be consistent with, because that's what really matters, the consistency of it all. Like, if you're going to do it, stay one way and just, keep pressing on, and it'll work out in the long run.
Yeah, I think that's our culture, the African American context. I think that's one of the things that has held us. Obviously, there's numerous things that have
Yeah.
held us back from a financial standpoint. In comparison to other races, I could talk about the wealth gap for hours, right?
Ugh.
But one thing that there's a lot of that we don't control. We have no control of, but we do control what happens in our house. And so there's been generation after generation that hasn't had tough conversations no conversations about money, but not even tough conversations other than that, about how to be a man, how to be a husband, you know what I mean?
No.
How to be a good community member, like,
Yeah.
we just have to figure out so much. Number one, because a lot of us are missing, because we're incarcerated or we are objectified in other ways, and we're not as present as we want to be. Other ways that we're taken out of context. Even those that are in the house,
Yep.
they're so overworked and so worn out. By the time that they get home, they're present, but they're not present. And so again, we have a generation, 2 or 3 generations now, that have been raising themselves And they've had to go and figure out life, and they've had to come to their own conclusions because we haven't had enough intentional conversations. What is insurance?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Right.
what is
No,
insurance?
it's
Like,
it is so crazy.
what
Yeah.
is a stock versus a bond?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what type of interest rate should I be looking for in a savings account? What is an interest rate? Why
Right.
is that important? These are conversations, and we definitely need to be talking about student loans because it's killing
It is.
an entire generation.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and you're talking about the wealth gap. Woo. Yeah, it just continues to put us further and further back in terms of being able to be successful. We already had a late start in this race, and it's like we still haven't started. Everybody else is still running, and our culture to some degree is just still, in the back, right? And I'm not saying this from the top of the mountain as if I'm the one doing the best. I still have my challenges. This is one of the reasons why I'm having this conversation with you. I'm seeking growth and development in areas where I know I'm deficient, right?
Okay, now pause there for 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
That is an important characteristic of growth, is to always be learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do
Absolutely.
we teach that to our kids? Do we say what you just said is perfect, right? Now, how can we distill that down to an 8-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 4-year-old? We got to look at their life. We got to look at, when they come home and they get frustrated by an assignment, a math assignment that they got. There's a perfect opportunity to say, I know this is frustrating. I know, but there's a benefit to not giving up. There's a benefit to always seeking to learn more, because the more you learn, the higher you can go in life. As an example, right now, this is you talking to your son. I'm trying to get us to a certain place in our finances. And so daddy is reading this book right now because I want to keep growing. So son, you got to do the same thing. I know this math is challenging, but it's training you to be a learner, because as long as you're learning, you are growing. Like, we just have to turn around. We can't just, as men, as dads, I think it's very easy as providers to have this tunnel vision. Like, I'm trying to get my family to a certain place. I'm trying to outdo my parents, and I'm trying to just elevate our last name to another level.
Right.
And you're always looking forward, and you forget to turn around and drop off some of the nuggets that you're learning along the way, so that as your children are growing up, you are giving them a head start in that way. You don't have to go first to figure everything out, then decide to turn around and say, hey, guess what I figured out? Because now they're 21.
Right.
You know what I mean? As you go, as you grow, turn around, give it to your wife, give it to your kids, and let them know what you're learning along the way. That's how we're going to change this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we didn't get off topic, but we can definitely go down. There's so many topics that we can talk about and get some real good nuggets. But I want to keep going in terms of moving through this conversation. So you went to the military after high school, right? And after the military, when did you get married?
I got married. I did 12 years. So at year 8, I got married.
And you were how old around that time?
25.
25. Young.
Yep.
Young
but old. I had lived. I had lived a little bit.
Well, yeah.
I left home at 17. I was in combat at 22. I was a leader at 21. So, I had lived.
So why the military though? Like why forego college and go to the military?
I got fed up with school and football. I was a football player my whole life, all the way through high school, scholarship offers and everything, turned them all down. I was burnt out. My dad was former military, and I just had a conversation with a recruiter, and it just made sense, because I didn't want to just go to school just to go. Although I was an honor student, that wasn't a thing, but my heart wasn't in it. You know what I mean? Like, I would have just been going and probably would have ended up in some degree plan that I really didn't care about. And so I've always been a forward thinker. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I'm not going to waste time. I don't want to go to college right now, but I'm not going to waste time. So, I figured that, being in the military would allow me to still grow up, still allow me to develop as a person. And I wouldn't be like a bum. You know what I mean?
Right.
I had, there's older kids in the neighborhood and stuff that, I'm looking at them like, nah, I ain't trying to end up like that. So, I needed an alternative, and the military was the best one for me in that season of my life.
Fair enough. And you were born and raised in Chicago?
Yep, 100%
Gotcha. South side or west side?
South.
Man, we were really connecting until you said south side. I don't want to get in no
Sorry.
south side or west
You know
side
what's crazy? You know
war.
what's crazy? I was thinking about this the other day.
Yeah.
I was literally, because my church are gonna open up a camp. Not my church, but the church I attend.
Hmm.
There's gonna be a campus open up on the west side, and I wouldn't even know how to drive. Like I wouldn't even know how to get around over there.
That is
Like
disrespectful.
that was kind of sad to me. I'm like,
It
it's
is.
Chicago.
It
Like I
is.
can probably count on one hand the number of times I've been to the west side of Chicago,
Yeah, I
and
don't know what that
a
gap is.
couple
I
of
don't even
times
know where this stuff started. Like this whole south side, west side thing. But it's fun at times when you run into to people from the south side.
craziest thing. Sorry, but back on track.
Yeah. So did you always want to be a father, or did that kind of come after you decided to get married?
No, always, always.
Always.
I just had that blueprint in front of me of a
Mm-hmm.
South. I'm blessed. I know I'm in the minority,
Right.
but I had a mom and dad that loved me, and I wanted to replicate that. I wasn't in a rush to get married. Like I said, even though 25 is young in comparison to a lot of people, I was an old 25. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Okay.
So I was very intentional in how I live my life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have kids until after I got married. I did a lot of things um, wrong, but I did some things right because I wanted to get to a certain place where with a certain family
Right.
dynamic, and I was blessed to be able to do that.
So you said something that's really key in terms of intention, right? And how was that a trait that you've always had, or is that something that you had to decide? Like you're going to be very intent about the decisions that you make, and obviously be accountable for those decisions. Because I think that growing up, when you get in that space to where you're probably 25 and be probably more like 22 to 30 in that range, whereas like a lot of when you say you've seen the world, you've seen a lot of things. Do you feel like the intentional piece is you, or is that something that was kind of instilled in you? Because I think if men are more intentional about the decisions that they make, we can be better, quote unquote, providers and protectors.
I think it was there,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it was cultivated.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like I think life taught me that it was in me. My dad pushed me, taught me, winners never quit and quitters never win. And taught me, even when they were teaching me about money, it was about, saving money for a rainy day, a future time, thinking about the future, not just thinking about today. So just over time, even, coaches in football, when they teach you, nutrition and they're making you run over and over and over again. Why? It's not for today. They say, you're going to thank me in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing this so that when the fourth quarter comes, you don't run out of steam. And so just little things like that over time, it's become, if I'm honest, it can be a gift and a burden because I'm always looking down the road. And sometimes it's to a fault because I have to then be intentional about stopping and pausing and looking at how far I've come, some of the things that I've done, because my eyes are always 5 years down the road. And so that's been a lesson that God's been teaching me over 2018, this past year,
Mm-hmm.
was to just be also intentional about looking at my grace and looking how far, I've brought you from one place to the next. So yes, I believe that it was in me, but I also believe that it was cultivated and I've been able to just build upon that. But now I have to be careful that it doesn't become a hindrance to me.
Fair enough. So what about marriage has challenged you the most?
Well, the biggest challenge is because I'm an only child.
Mm.
And so I'm used to figuring things out on my own, having my own space, own time. And when you are married, if you want it to last, if you want it to be healthy, then you need to communicate. You need to act as a team. That's your partner. That's the person that you dedicated your life to. And so For me, I had to, and I still am learning how to be a communicator, learning how to not just try to do things on my own, figure out situations on my own, but to open up to my wife and allow her to be the help that God created her to be.
Man, trying to get there. So what's more important then, husband or father? Being a better husband or being a better father?
What's more important to
Right.
what? That's a
Well, to
loaded
you,
question.
yeah, it is loaded. But so if what's the best way to put this? It, I guess what comes first in your mind, being a better husband or being a better father?
Well, I think that husband comes first because that was the first relationship that God created.
Hmm.
That's how things got started in Genesis with Adam and Eve. And I think that the only healthy way to raise children in your home is to have a healthy marriage and to be as strong of a union as you can be. I think that speaks volumes to your children when they can clearly see that my mom loves my dad or my dad loves my mom. That becomes something that they aspire to, something that they want for themselves. So I think a byproduct of strengthening your marriage is that you do strengthen your parenting.
Hmm. Yeah. Taking notes. So in that, what would you say has been the most rewarding thing about being a father?
Oh man, the
And the
most
most
rewarding
challenging
thing.
after you answer that?
Okay, the most rewarding thing is to have like the way your kids love you is just it's almost unreal. You know what I mean? Like I can not look favorable on my job or people at the church could be talking about me or I could have, just had a disagreement with my wife, but it's like your children just see you as this hero
Yeah.
24 hours a day. It's just like, man, you know what I mean? It's indescribable. I always, like I said, look forward to being a father, but the type that childlike love, that's what God tells us to come to him with. You know what I mean? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
just so, and it's so pure. You know what I mean? It is a very pure love. I think that's been the greatest blessing of parenthood, and probably the biggest challenge is I just want to get it right. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Like
yeah.
I don't want to mess this up.
Right.
We got three little ones, 9, 7, and 5,
Oh,
and
bless your
I
heart.
just I
Bless your
just
heart.
want to tee this thing up, so that
Yeah.
they're successful. You know what I mean? I don't want to blow it. That's the hardest thing.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I have these conversations all the time where it's like I feel like in all that I want to do, I'm inherently still going to wind up screwing them up in some kind of fashion, but I'm still
Yeah,
doing the
yeah,
very best that I can with the information that I have before me, even with all my flaws and baggage.
yeah.
It is still atop my list of things to do the best that I can for
And I,
for
I
my
think
children.
that's the key. That's the key for every dad, mom, whoever's listening, every parent that's listening. It's important to just give your best. We have to stop seeking perfection, and we just have to seek growth. We have to do better tomorrow than we did today. And I think that even goes to, because some of us are adults, but we're not whole ourselves because of fractured relationship with our parents or lack thereof. And in a lot of instances, I remember my pastor saying on more than one occasion, like, you can't hold this bitterness to your parents, because in a lot of instances, even though they didn't give you what you need, they gave you the best that they had.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of situations, they got even less than they were able to give you.
Mm-hmm.
And so our goal as parents is to just do our best. You know what I mean? Like, don't try to be perfect, because you won't get there, and you not getting there will cause you to miss it, man. Because I read a quote not too long ago. It said that you're not you're and I'm gonna butcher it, but the essence of the quote was, the what we're doing with our children while they're in our house, it's not about the 18 years that they're with us. It's about the 60 years that they're not. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah.
So what we're doing right now is to prepare them for life outside of our home. And if we're so busy trying to be perfect, we're gonna look up and we missed it. They're 18 and gone. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so just dig in and make today the best that it can be, and then try to outdo that tomorrow.
So the perfect segue from that is, what is the first lesson that you taught your kids about money?
Probably the same. We got them accounts early, so like birthday money, Christmas money. Um, we generally, like, for birthdays, we take them to the store and they're able to buy something, but they also have to, we're Christians, so they pay tithes. They walk it up, they put it in themselves. They have accounts at banks. They go that we take them, they make deposits into their accounts. Not just mommy and daddy doing it for you, but they know what the bank is. They know what an account is, and so, like I said, they're still small. We're gonna soon be incorporating certain things that they can do around the house to earn money for things that they want. Because, especially my son, the oldest, there's things that he wants, games and, certain clothing and Lego,
Yeah.
that he can, because we don't do a whole lot for them in that vein throughout the year, because we do it real big for Christmas. And so, if there's something in between those times that they want, we want them to know, again, that money comes from work. Money doesn't come from begging or whining.
So there is a balance there, right? You're talking about, there's some things and chores you're going to have them do around the house, and I assume that there's going to be
Yeah.
some money associated with that. Is there a balance there? Like, there's things that you do for the house because you are in this community, right?
Sure.
And
For
then,
sure.
so there you see that as being a balance?
Yeah, I think it's important that the first thing you teach them is that like you just said, this household, for us, our last name is McNeely. So we all of our last name is McNeely.
Right.
And so it's up to all of us to make sure that our village, which is our home, is running smoothly and optimally, and we all have a part to play in that. So there's gonna be some stuff that you got to do daily, just because your last name is McNeely. Period. It's not up for debate. But there might be some things that you want to do. There might be, like, there was, for example, not too long ago, they had a book fair, and there was books that they wanted to buy. So, they had to earn that money to do it.
Yeah. So I'm working at incorporating that, at least for my 6-year-old. I'm already working on. We have a little playroom, so, and there are toys in the playroom and behind that door, and I try to be as consistent with telling them that they have to earn their way in. So the key into the playroom is they have to follow or do certain rules, do certain things throughout the day to earn their way into the playroom. So there's a balance there as well. So I'll be working money and chores and community into that situation here very soon, at least for the oldest.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about it earlier, and so I hope that you can go a little bit deeper in terms of why you think that there's such a lack of conversation surrounding personal finances within the Black community.
Well, money's emotional. When you have a lot of it, you feel great. When you're lacking, you feel awful. And that's not something you want to talk about. Number two, historically, that's just the way it has been. I talked to my mom not too long ago, and we were talking just really about, our heritage, and, because she's originally from Mississippi. And so I just started asking a lot of questions about that. She was like, you know what? I don't know. She was like, grown folks, they didn't talk. You know what I mean? That's Jim Crow South era.
Right.
And so there was a lot going on there, and conversations weren't had. And so now, if you're a child of that, when you become an adult, that you thought that was normal. And so now you have children of your own. And so, because they told you a child stays in a child's place, now you tell your kids a child stays in a child's place. And your children aren't a part of adult conversation. Now, again, this is not me saying, like, bring your kids in on everything the adults are talking about, but if their opportunity arises to have a needed conversation, even if it's at their level and it's with their situation, but you can turn that into a moment at their level using their situation to open up a door to talk about a tough topic like money, then do so. If there's a part of your financial journey, again, I'm not saying, like, tell your kids how much you make and things like that, but you can say something in general, like, before we can talk about, the new Lego set that you want, there's this thing called income. That's the money that we make as a result of going to work. But then there's also expenses. What an expense is things like the light bill, the cable bill. So we have to take our income and use that to pay these expenses before we can discuss things that we want. That can be a conversation about needs versus wants. Again, you don't have to use exact dollars, but you can use general principles to plant seeds that you can water as they continue to grow.
So what would you say would be a nice ripe age to begin to start incorporating that everyday kind of conversation when it's income, expenses, and stuff like that? Should you just always kind of have that and then, it sticks, or is there a certain age that you believe you can start really having that conversation?
We started with piggy banks. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like when grandma or grandpa would give them a quarter, it goes in a piggy bank, because that's their account.
Gotcha.
In their mind. So again, it's about being at their level. It don't have to be deep all the time. You could save that for as they get older. A great book for those that are listening that talks about principles from kids your age all the way up to a 24-year-old child of yours is called Make Your Kid a Money Genius by Beth Kobliner, Kobliner. Great book to give a lot, and it's very practical. That's what I love most about the book. I've read lots of books. I read a lot, so I read a lot of books on money and parenting, and I think that's one of the best one to give a lot of practical examples that deal with whatever age range your particular children are in.
Got it. I've also heard you say before, like before you got married, compared to your wife, your idea of finances needed some work.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so what was your tipping point to make you want to change, and what was your first step in making that change?
Yeah. So I was tired. Again, I'm military, so I'm working hard, risking a lot, and having nothing to show for it at the end of the month. I apologize.
No problem.
I had nothing to show for it at the end of the month because of my decisions, my poor spending habits, and I just got fed up. I was tired of being broke. I was tired of having a good job and yet living paycheck to paycheck. It just became super duper frustrating. And so I knew the problem wasn't nobody but me. That's step one, is realizing that you're the problem.
Right.
And then I started to read. I started with books. I started with articles on the internet. And I was trying to because I didn't have the knowledge base, I was trying to create the knowledge base within myself to find out where the holes were and how I was managing my money. It wasn't overnight at all. So, I would read some things and try some things. So, I read, stuff talking about you should have a mutual fund. So I went and got a mutual fund, and I would open up that statement every month, and I just didn't like what I saw. And so 2 months later, I closed the mutual fund. and just because I didn't know about, riding it out in long-term, it was just like, I don't like the way this looking. I feel like I'm getting robbed.
Right. Without a ski mask. Ain't nobody sticking you up. You just losing money.
Yeah. So but I kept trying stuff. I was like, man, I need to save. Let me go open a savings account. But then I would, transfer from savings to checking, then end up with nothing in my savings account. And I just had to keep trying. The key is to not just learn, but to apply.
Oh.
And what was happening though, as I was trying to turn the corner with my application, was my mindset was changing. Like, as I'm reading more and more stuff, it started to get interesting. I'm like, dang, why ain't nobody tell me this is kind of cool? Reading Black Enterprise and seeing these business men and women doing this and doing that and talking about investments. It was kind of cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the big thing that happened was I got married because I was at the point of getting it together when I was engaged and getting married. The problem was I still had all the consequences of my past right behind me. So I had over $30,000 of debt, and I'm about to get married to a woman with perfect credit, had never been in debt, had paid her way through college by working at a shoe store. and was working in the financial services business, one of the top companies in that industry. And she's one of the top employees at this company. And here I come with my debt. So I had the brilliant idea, like, I'm not going to tell her. I'm going to try to figure out how to get rid of this debt before I get married so that it's not an issue. But that plan failed because God's never going to allow you to build a house on sinking sand. And so I had to confess and say, listen, I blew it in my early 20s, made a whole bunch of mistakes, and I have this debt. And we almost didn't get married because I had lied to her this whole time. And so we had to do a whole lot of praying and a whole lot of conversating, but we did get married. Thanks be to God for that. And, it was really her willingness to be a teammate of mine. Once we prayed and got on the other side of my lie, it became about us figuring this out together. So we would read books together, send each other articles, discuss a plan of attack. And because we worked together, we were able to get out of that debt in the first year of our marriage. So we cleared out over $30,000 of consumer debt within our first year of marriage, man. You know what? And that's a testament to he that findeth a wife findeth a good thing and obtain favor with the Lord. Because she had a knowledge base that was far past mine. And she was not looking down upon me. She was not making me feel less than a man. She was like, yo, let's figure this out, you and me. And we ran with that. And that's how we got to this place that we are now, even to the point of having a paid off house.
With all that being said, you obviously had to build a foundation, and that foundation came with, with you connecting with your wife and being honest and accountable for what you were bringing to the table. So today, what are your principles of personal finance?
So my three principles, or some of my principles, are first and foremost, get out of debt. Do everything you can to eliminate as much debt from your life as you possibly can, because I'm a firm believer that debt delays destiny. I believe that a lot of people are going to jobs daily that they don't like, but they have to go to it to keep up with the payments that are in their life.
Now, I don't want to stop. I
Yep.
hate when people say it. I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm gonna cut you off. When you say debt, there's always this conversation around good debt and bad debt. Is that in your principles? Is there such thing as good debt and bad debt, or like get rid of all debt?
Okay, I am not a believer in good debt and bad debt.
Okay.
I know I've done the research, and I get what people are saying. They say things like, student loan can be a good debt because if it leads you to have a career where your income goes up, then it was worth it. Or they may say things like, your mortgage is good debt because it's providing you a roof over your head. You're not paying rent. You're an owner, and things like that. But nah, I hate debt. I think that when you get rid of debt, that you are able to make the types of decisions that are based on what you're passionate about. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to, like, the Bible says the borrower is slave to the lender. So, when you are in debt and your daily habits are being controlled by Navient and Sally Mae and Bank of America and Chase and on and on and on, they're dictating your dollars. Right. And when they're dictating your dollars, all you're doing is trying to just keep up with payments. And so you're not able to launch that business. You're not able to start that ministry. You're not able to be a stay-at-home parent. You know what I mean? Like, you're not able to do the things that you want to do because you're doing what you have to do. You see what I'm saying? There's a difference between, because we only get one shot at this life.
Right.
And so if you spend your whole life doing what you have to do in lieu of doing what you want to do, I don't know if that's the life that I want to say that I lived when it's all said and done. Now, there's a season where you have to do what you have to do, but the goal is to do what you have to do to the point that now you're able to do what you want to do. So grind as much as you can to get debt out of your life because it allows you to make some better decisions. Number one. Number two, build wealth. That's not a discussion that we're having in a lot of our homes. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be complicated. If your employer has a 401k plan or a 403b plan, if you work at a non-for-profit, find out what your options are and invest, especially if your company has a match, meaning that up to a certain amount for every dollar that you put in, they put in $1. You got to take that. Because if you don't, you're leaving money on the table. So put some money into a 401k, a 403b, or if you're self-employed, an IRA. Like, we should all be doing something because you're going to want to retire at some point. And depending on Social Security is a really bad idea because it may not exist, right?
Right.
So get out of debt, build wealth, and there is nothing more powerful than ownership. I think one of the reasons that my wife and I grinded so hard to pay off our home was to show our people what ownership looks like. So we went from being homeowners to owners of our home. It's not the same thing.
Right.
The bank knows who owns this home. Our county knows who owns this home. And it's us. Our kids know who owns this home. It's us. And when you own your cars, when you own your degrees, when you own your property, there's power that comes with that. There's leverage that comes with that. There's a sense of entitlement, not a distorted sense of entitlement that's prideful, but a sense of accomplishment. Maybe it's a better word. And that is a lesson to your kids. Like, what if we all decided to flip this thing and we stopped creating legacies of debt and started creating legacies of ownership? What if instead of mom having a student loan and daughter having a student loan, what if we all owned our homes? What if we all drove paid for cars? What if we all had degrees that didn't have loans attached to them? What type of community would we look like then? What type of causes could we contribute to then? What kind of community engagement could we embark on then if we had the money to put into things, causes, resources that we cared about, that we believed in, instead of sending those same dollars to billion-dollar corporations that don't care nothing about us? So I think it's important to get out of debt, build wealth, and own as much of your stuff as you possibly can.
So I think it's very important for the audience to know. You can talk a little bit about, you've said it already that you guys have paid off your home and you own it outright.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how quickly you guys paid off your home, and a little, because I know you have a master class teaching people how to do the same thing. So, a few points as to how you guys went about doing that.
Yeah, for sure. So the first step was we said that we were going to do it.
Speak it into existence.
So we bought the house with the intention of paying the house off early. So we said that we will by no means wait 30 years to pay this house off. Because if you do the math, if you wait 30 years, you've paid for the house twice. Now, you might say, well, so what? I don't plan on staying there 30 years. Well, check this out. Let's keep talking math, and then I'll get to the rest of your question. So the average, according to research, the average person lives in their home for 7 years and then moves. Now, if we know that, chances are the banks know that, okay? And the answer is yes, they do know that.
They do, yeah.
And so If anybody that's listening owns a home, why don't you do me a favor? Go on your lender's account or website, pull up your account, take a look at your amortization statement, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you'll notice is for the first 7 to 10 years of your 30-year amortization, you're paying mostly interest. You think that's accidental? It's not. Because what happens is when you move at year 7, you have paid the majority of the interest on the loan. So the bank got their money.
Mm-hmm.
And now what are you about to do? You're about to go sign up for another mortgage. And you're going to pay that first 7 years all over again. So they won in both scenarios. Either you keep the house for 30 years, pay for it twice, or you move in 7 years having paid most of the interest already, and then you start a brand new loan where you're going to pay mostly interest again. It's a lose-lose.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, we're going to pay this house off in 5 years. My wife said it first. I said, oh, 5?
Right.
I was like, well, how? I'm calculating in my brain.
How we getting ready to do that?
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, as a good husband, I'm like, yeah, baby, we gonna do this. But in my mind, I'm like, how we gonna do this? But you know what, man? I've learned, man, to listen to the voice of my wife, and sometimes, you know what I mean, because women speak from a different place than a man. Men are a lot of times not trying to blanket nobody. A lot of times men are super analytical,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it doesn't leave room for faith. It doesn't leave room for growth, because our mind is like a toolbox, hammer and nails, and wood. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, but we wrote that thing down, man. We said we're gonna do this in 5 years. So that's step one, believe it or not, is to have enough faith to believe that you can. Like whatever your number is, maybe the number isn't 5 for you, but whatever it is, don't let it be 30.
Mm-hmm.
And make it written. Write it down. And then from there, we decided that we're never gonna make a minimum payment on this house. Ever. Now, what that looked like at the beginning when we looked at the numbers, the most that we can pay on top of our minimum payment was $20 a month.
Addition.
So
yeah.
it started with an extra $20. So I know y'all thought I was about to drop some magic science on y'all and say, if you use this super calculator, it'll all disappear. It started with a mustard seed, bro. $20. We called the lender and say, hey, we want you to automatically draft an extra $20 on top of our payment, an extra $20 principal payment. So now what happened was, at no point, like we said, from the gate, we said we ain't never making a minimum payment. And so what happened was we started to get creative and say, well, what else can we do? Is there anything over here we can sell that we ain't using no more? Oh, whoa, tax return. Let's just throw all that at the mortgage. And so we just started to get crafty and get creative. And we started to look for ways to find money to throw at the mortgage. And it turned into this big snowball. And it had a powerful effect over a 5-year period because our mindset changed. Like those little couple things, the fact that we wrote down that we was going to pay it off in 5, the fact that we said we was never going to make a minimum payment on this mortgage, the fact that we set up, we didn't leave it up to ourselves to pay that extra 20, but we set it on auto draft so that it was taken from us. Those 3 things alone helped change our viewpoint and our mindset and our mentality, and it became our full focus. What can we do to earn money to send to the mortgage? What can we get rid of to earn money to send to the mortgage? Is there a side hustle we can pick up? Is there an extra job we can pick up? Is there something we can sell to pick up? It all became it became a mission.
Mm-hmm.
It became a mission. And so there was like, when we made a list, can't go into it here because of time, but it turned out to be close to 30 different things that we did. And we didn't even think about that. This was crazy. We didn't write this out until after we were done. because when we were in the middle of it, we were just so locked in.
Yeah.
And so we were just doing a whole lot of things that added up to us paying off $330,000
Whew.
in 5 years. I
That's
mean,
one
five
income, two
years to the day.
income, grandma
One
income, Social
income.
Security.
My wife has been home
Hmm.
with the kids for 7 years.
Oh, so
So from the day that we closed on the home, 5 years from that date, we made the final payment on our mortgage.
wow.
But it started with us saying we was gonna do it.
Yeah.
I'm talking about 5 years to the date. We were in the bank. We went live. I'll shoot you a link.
Mm-hmm.
We went live. Had our kids with us. We had our kids get dressed up. Our girls had on dresses. My son had on a tie. I had on a suit. My wife had on a dress. We went up to the bank, made our last payment. They let us use their conference room. We went live and told the whole world about it. You know, my son's in the back holding up a sign that says "debt-free house." You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they are part of it. You
Right.
see what I'm saying? It's not so much I'm sitting down with a finance book.
Mm-hmm.
It's they're on the journey with us.
Yeah. A moment they'll never forget, and
Ever.
it'll keep going with them. Yeah.
Ever. So, we took time because people like after, that video kind of went viral.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm sure it did. I'm
It
sure.
was like, how did y'all do it? How did y'all
Right.
do it? How did y'all do it? We was like, dang, how did we do it? We had to sit there and think. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you going, you just going. And so it was so much that we did. We didn't even realize until after the fact. And so we created a course to walk people through it from start to finish, like 20 something different strategies that we use that you can use
Mm-hmm.
to accelerate the time by which you can own your home, not just be homeowners. You can find all the details, real simple, crushmymortgage.com. And you know why we created this course? Because this feels good. I'm sitting in it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking around and paid off walls. This was our first holiday season, paid off house. And we want as many people as possible to feel it. Like we could have just, rode off into the sunset and I told it so and just kind of lived our best life.
Right.
But we want other people to feel this. We want people to know that you don't have to be a slave to the bank. You ain't gotta give them. Let me tell you this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want y'all to think about this. This is why this is so serious. Now let this marinate. We paid off our house 25 years early, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we still had to give the bank $25,000 in interest.
Wait, I'm sorry. Is that in the fine print or like?
No, I'm just saying over the 5 years.
Over the 5 year period. Gotcha.
5 years
Okay.
that we were paying.
Gotcha.
Even though we paid our house off 25 years early,
Yeah.
we still ended up paying over $25,000 in interest. How much you think you're gonna pay? That's why we got to take this serious. And that's why we created the course, man. We don't want people blind. We don't want people ignorant. We want people free. So you can find out, the details to see if it's a good fit for you.
Right.
Crushmymortgage.com.
Got it. I mean that's extremely powerful. I mean we just don't talk about home ownership at all. I mean we talk about the American dream from images that we see, and once you have that home with the quote unquote white picket fence, then somehow you've arrived. But you're also sitting in that house in some dark room, thinking about this mortgage that you got to pay for the rest of your life. And we never really have those conversations about the small things that you can do to begin to nip away at that. Whether it's cutting your mortgage payment in half, and it then affects the time frame in which you will have to pay for your mortgage. That is so simple. Like it's just cutting two checks. If that's at a very simple level, it's cutting two checks.
But the point is, do something. Like don't do nothing.
Right.
Because and we've had it because our story went everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And people want to be deep and say that mathematically, you could have did this or that with that money. But you know what you can't put in a calculator? You can't put the feeling that I feel knowing that I own this house in a calculator.
Right.
Like you can try to hit me with this investment or that investment, but bro, sis, there's no greater feeling pulling up to the driveway
Yeah,
to something that you own. You know how many most people can't say that.
they can't. They can't.
And
They
most
can't.
people I know ain't nobody else on my block can say that. And
Right.
guess what? I'm one of the few people that look like me on this block. And I got the paid off house.
Yeah.
You can't put that in the calculator. I'm
No,
sorry.
you can't put freedom in a calculator. I told my wife, we went to lunch for New Year's, and I told her, I said, she asked me, goals and all these conversations that we have, and I say, I'm just chasing freedom. I'm chasing that feeling that if you decide that you don't want to that you don't want to work at the job you're working at, or if I wanted to do something completely different, or if hard times come, right? The knowing that the roof over our head, we're fine, we're not out in the cold, is freedom enough to where I am not stressed and thinking about jumping off a bridge, right?
That's it.
And so if you chase freedom throughout your life, whatever that means in your career, financially, and everything else with your kid, like if you chase that freedom, I think that you will be closely connected to happiness, and I think that's what the end game is, finding your happiness. So I absolutely 100% agree, and I'll definitely be checking out that link once you actually send it, and I'll be forwarding that over to everybody in the audience. Will have an opportunity to look at that link as well. And I know I'm running out of time, and I had a few more questions, but what I'll do is. What I did want to ask though, because you did mention that your wife has been home for 7 years, and I saw one of your videos on YouTube, and I heard you say that that's what my dad taught me when she was talking about how she felt about wanting to stay home. And one of the things that I think about when one of the parties in a relationship wants to stay home for the long haul, how do you plan for retirement in that case?
So this and not only retirement, but you need to, if you have a stay-at-home parent in the relationship, you need to factor life insurance, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So what do we do for retirement? She has an IRA that I contribute to, and I say I because in order to have an IRA, you have to have earned income.
Mm-hmm.
So part of my income goes into an IRA that's earmarked for her. I have a 401k. I have an IRA. And so it's just about setting up, a certain percentage goes to an IRA for you, an IRA for me, a 401k. But it's necessary, right?
Right.
And so even if you're not at the place to where one of you can come home, how about you set your life up in that direction? Turn the corner a little bit. So another great book by actually the newly crowned presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren, way before she was a politician, when she was just a professor at Harvard. She wrote a book called The Two Income Trap. And it's a book that changed our life. Because what happens is we set up our life to be dependent upon two incomes. So we buy a house that we got approved on based on two incomes. We have a car note, one for you, one for me.
Mm-hmm.
And we live a certain lifestyle that demands two incomes. But what if you change that? Now, maybe you can't ratchet it back to all the way to 50%, but can you live off 85% of your income and use 15% towards debt payoff or wealth building? You know what I mean? Like if you can't do it like we did it, like from day one, we only lived off half our income, even when we were both working. So when it was time for her to come home, it wasn't a big deal.
Wasn't a big deal.
So now, if you can't live off 50, can you live off 85? Can you live off 90? And then be strategic with that 10, with that 15, and position yourself to roll back even more. So if you just do 90%, right, and you use that 10% to hammer away at a debt, and then another debt, now maybe you have the room to go to 85%, and then you just slowly peel it back. Because when you create that margin in your income versus your expenses, again, like you talked about earlier, chasing freedom, you're free to make some different types of choices. But if you just stay doing what you're doing, maxing out your income, and just going on the hamster wheel, you'll never You'll chase the freedom, but you'll never get there.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like, we got to do things different. If you want different results, you got to do different. It might sound painful. It might be painful, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
It absolutely is. And I'm glad we're having this conversation because it's more about the tools to be able to get there. Sometimes we have this idea that it takes a lot more to get to the place that we believe that we want to be. Right. And so we have this idea in our head about, it'd be nice to pay off your mortgage, but how am I going to do this? I got student loans. I got 2 car notes. And you talked about just in the beginning, we only had $20 to put towards an additional payment. And then there was
a seed though that grew. We watered it and it became something else.
Right. And so I'm glad we're having this conversation and you dropping these gems with these tools and tips that'll definitely help us get the engine running or prime this engine. To get it going. So I got 2 final questions for you.
Yes, sir.
And I'll let you get off, let you get back to the wife and kids. What are 3 things that you are doing to become a better version of yourself?
I'm always reading. Right now I'm reading The New Millionaire Next Door. Just came out by Thomas Stanley. He's now deceased, but his work was continued on by his daughter, and they co-wrote this book. And it just came out, The New Millionaire Next Door. It's a follow-up to The Millionaire Next Door that came out in 1996. Prayer is huge because I don't have all the answers. And when I try to position myself as being the be-all, end-all for myself and for everybody around me, I end up in a broken place, burnt out, and unable to cope. So I make sure I stay connected to the vine through prayer. And always self-reflecting / self-assessing. Looking at myself and how I handle things from an objective standpoint to see, did I handle it right? Is there a way that I can handle it better? Are there some holes in me that I need to seek some clarity on, maybe even some counseling on? Because I'm able, when you're self-aware, you're able to see not only your strengths but your weaknesses, and you're able to make the proper adjustments so that you don't become a stagnant human being.
Definitely, I 100% agree with that. With all 3 of those points. So the last question is, can you finish this sentence for me? Every dad should
seek to be the best version of themselves that they can be, because when you do that, the fruit of it will be that all those around you will be able to grow with you as well.
Boom. I don't have anything else after that. That's a great way to finish this conversation. Talaat, man, I really appreciate you taking the time, man, and again dropping these gems on us. And I look forward to checking out your master class. Before we go, let everyone know how they can get in touch with His and Her Money and all the things all those hats that you guys have.
For sure. I mean, you just said it. Like, everything that you need to know is at hisandhermoney.com. No matter what social media platform is your fancy, you will find us there. And our handle everywhere is His and Her Money. That easy.
That easy. And definitely check out the podcast. It's
come on.
It's definitely riveting. They got some dope conversation and the YouTube channel actually too, which is pretty dope as well.
Subscribe to both because they're different. They're not the same content. So. I really hope you enjoyed this episode on personal finance with Talaat McNeely. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to this episode. You can find the link in the episode notes. Simply tap or swipe up over the cover art. You will also see other affiliate links pertaining to books or products mentioned in the episode. Please support our show by checking out these links if you're interested. Those clicks will provide our show with a small commission if you decide to purchase. If you like what you're hearing, we would love for you to give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe. I'm your host, Terrell Lindsay. Until next time, be awesome.